I welcome you to this week's community show. This show is convened by Center for Constitutional Governance and Civic Space TV. In this show, we discuss largely matters that impact on communities. And for the past weeks, we've been discussing Uganda broadly as a build-up to the Independence Day, which is on October 9. And today we are going to talk about Uganda's political development and throughout these 60 years. We want to see where Uganda has come from. We want to see where Uganda is. We want to see where Uganda is going. Importantly, we want to discuss some of those events that have shaped Uganda politically. We want to discuss some figures that have contributed to the political development of Uganda. We want to, also discuss the environment of some of those political developments. And to help me in this discussion, I'm joined by two people who are not new to politics in the political circles in Uganda and in community political mobilization. They're not new people. I'll ask each one to introduce themselves, and then we shall kickstart the show. I'll begin with Enid.
I'm called Rubegyemera Enid. I come from Mitooma district. Currently, I am Secretary for Finance in NRM Mitooma district, local government. I've been in politics for quite some time, and you can say I'm still active in politics. I'm glad to be on this platform.
Thank you very much, Enid.
Mulindwa Walid Lubega. I'm the National Youth League chairperson of the Forum for Democratic Change Party, Youth League. First of all, I would like to appreciate Center for Constitutional Governance for offering us this civic space. And I also would like to appreciate you, Comrade Musiime Alex Martin, for moderating this show, as well as fellow panelists who have sacrificed part of their busy schedule to be with us, to share as we build the nation. And also, congratulations to all of us. Happy Independence Day in advance, all Ugandans in Uganda and across the world.
Thank you very much. I would have started with you to give us a sort of a brief history of Uganda's political development or Uganda's politics, but to avoid a bit of controversy, let me begin with Enid. Enid, please give us, in your view, a political, a summary of what you think Uganda's political development has been. Now, that is broad, but you could tell us some of those events that you think have shaped Uganda's politics throughout these 60 years.
I'm glad that I'm waiting to see Uganda reaching the 60 years of independence. And as a Ugandan, I'm happy that we have seen through all these years and what it means to become independent. You see, Uganda achieved its independence in 1962, and it has passed through various steps of political development. We had started with political parties during the 1960s, and we have passed through a number of developments in political parties. Currently, ever since this government of NRM started, you had started with one party system and then we transformed to a multi-party system, of which to me, I see there has been a development in sharpening the minds of the people about the being in political parties. Although there are some number of challenges that we have seen there and there, here and there, some people don't understand being in a political party. That's why you find they are moving from one party today to another party tomorrow. They come back and they do that and that. Then even the government, somewhere it has not created the environment for people to understand what it means being in a political party. But other areas of political development, I appreciate we have moved a step in creating freedom of participation and involvement in decision making. We have seen women being brought up on board. Like today, we have 40% of representation in government, both cabinet and parliament. We have seen human rights being respected. We have seen health and other sectors improved. Because when you see how we started in 1960s up to today, at least you can see there is some infrastructure development that has taken place in almost all sectors. So Uganda, I think, to me, it has moved a step in political development as far as the 60 years of independence that we have gone through. So I think as a country, much as we are still rated as a developing country, we are still dropping most of the ideas to see that we have got a well-established political environment where each and every person can be free to participate, enjoy, own decisions that are taken by the government.
Thank you for that, Enid. Yes, before I come to you, Walid, to our viewers, Uganda got independence in 1962. Oh, Harris is here, so I will not need to go through the constitutional development, which is also linked so much with the political development of Uganda. And that is a question I'll leave to you. Mr. Mulindwa, please, the question is now to you. Give us some of those events that you think have shaped the political development of this country.
Thank you very much, Comrade Musiime. I also welcome my comrade and former member of the FDC, Honorable Harris Akampulira Walakira. Justice. Fast forward, our 60 years of it are punctuated by numerous success stories, but also with colossal failures in governance and public policy. The increasing human rights abuses cannot just run away. We can't just move without hinting on it. The corruption and the systematic democratic reversals that continuously undermine the trust of the citizenry of the people of Uganda. That is so far the preamble as we dissect on the political development and also the events that have shaped the 60 years, our 60 years of independence. But also, it should be noted that in the 60 years of independence, we've had over 8 presidents who have shared almost half of the independence. And also, the rest, the bigger chunk of the 60 years have been shared by only one person, that is General Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. So while we are dissecting on the road, the road from independence to date, we must be cognizant of the leadership then, and also the leadership of General Museveni. Because those activities, all those events have happened within the years of our leader, those leaders, the 9 presidents that have ruled Uganda. But also, while we are dissecting on the journey, our journey of independence, the 6 years, we must also be mindful that Uganda have had the youthful stage of independence. The youthful stage of independence, that is the first chunk of this 6 years. That is the years of the 8 presidents of Uganda, where which has been punctuated by civil wars, unrest, and also we must be cognizant of the fact that every president, every leader, with the exception of Sir Edward Mutesa, every leader has been coming to power through the gun. So the gun rule is at the center of bringing in a new leader and also the exit of a leader. So we've never had a peaceful transfer of power from one leader to another. We've never had an election where somebody has been booted out of leadership through an election. So it has been a gun rule that has punctuated the ushering in of the leader and also the exit of the leader. So we also acknowledge the mistakes of our forefathers, especially the 8 presidents that has ruled Uganda in the first half of the independence, the post-independence Uganda. And in my own view and the view of the Forum for Democratic Change Party that I represent, we believe that the mistakes were justifiable in one way or the other, and we can actually forgive our leaders. First of all, the leaders that came into leadership never had an opportunity of having a stable leadership. For example, the leadership of General Museveni, the 37 years of General Museveni, where he had a cool leadership of 37. So we could really forgive the leaders like Binaisa. We can't compare Binaisa. And I had recently President Museveni blaming issues of Karamoja on the past leaders. Really, it is inordinate, very ridiculous to blame Binaisa, who was in power for less than a month, for failure to handle issues of Karamoja, and we leave out President Museveni, who has been in power for the last 37 years, and he has failed to pacify and also to develop the people of Karamoja. So blaming the past leaders, it is really not in good shape as we celebrate the 6 years of independence. So 37 years, we would expect progress. We would have expected democracy to have flourished. We would have expected peace. We would have expected development. But on the contrary, because as I said that the past 8 years, we forgive the leaders for the mistakes they committed. But for the 37 years, this would be years of perfection. The years of correcting the errors that were made by our past leaders. But we have seen a lot of reversal. We've, for example, as we discuss the trajectory, we look at Parliament as an institution that in 1966, we can look at the pigeonhole constitution that came into force. where then Attorney General, the late Professor Binaisa, brought the motion on the floor of Parliament, and the motion was for members of Parliament to pass it even without discussing it. They were told that the draft was within their pigeonholes. So the Parliament was surrounded by army, and the members of Parliament were almost coerced to pass this constitutional reforms, which actually ushered into the presidential system away from the parliamentary system that was envisaged in the 1962 Constitution, the Independence Constitution. So we see the same thing happen in 2018 when Parliament was surrounded, was not only surrounded for the case of Obota and Binaisa, the army was outside the vicinity of Parliament. For the case of Museveni, over 50 years, we saw army entering the Parliament, not only entering the vicinity, but entering the chambers of Parliament, where we saw members of Parliament being beaten and also being forced to pass the constitutional amendment that provided for the removal of the only remaining safety valve of the presidential age limit, paving a way for Mr. Museveni's life presidency. So that is really, that was unprecedented, because as a mistake was committed in 1966, but it wasn't at the same magnitude as that of the 2018. So we see a complete reversal. We cannot come and say we really have a strong parliament that can be compared to the first 30 of the first half of the post-independence Uganda. So we see a complete reversal. Even parliament being a rubber stamp of the executive. Just recently, we saw the issues of Nyege. Parliament, headed by the presiding officer, the Right Honorable Anita Among, the speaker, coming up with a resolution to say Nyege is out of order. We are not going to have it. Then we see the prime minister, the head of government business in the house, leading the leadership of the executive, saying over our dead body, Nyege must happen. So the executive defeating parliament, yet on the other way around, parliament is bigger, is more supreme than executive. So we saw executive being killing, hamstringing parliament as an institution. So we cannot come out and say we have a strong parliament, the parliament that can, because we have a parliament that is really a walking stick of one man, the president. So we cannot really come and say we have progressed in terms of having a strong parliament. When we look at judiciary, in the 1980s, we saw the Obote regime bringing the detention without trial order under the then justice minister. But where members of the opposition and those who were suspected to be the regime opponents were being detained. They were being detained without trial as the regime continued to stifle space for the opposition and also dissenting views by then. That was a mistake then. But 30 years back, 30 years after that, we see the same detention orders in parliament. As we speak, we have the two members of parliament, elected members of parliament. The Honorable Sewanyana, member of parliament for Makindye West, and the Honorable Segirinya, member of parliament for Kawempe North. Now it is a year. Kawempe North and Makindye West, they don't have a representative in parliament. Their issues are not represented. The members of parliament are in detention. We've never had their cases kick-starting. We are only in ping pong. So it is just a refined way of doing things than the way Obote did it. Maybe Obote was crude, but this is a more refined way, but it is the same. So we haven't really progressed as a country. That in terms of judicial system, we have a judicial system that is really, and also the CID department, which is weaponized to punish those in the political opposition. A case in point is a 30 million cash bail that was stamped on Colonel Dr. Kizza Besigye on just a very stupid, a very vague, trumped up case of illegal assembly. And you say for somebody to be bailed out, he needs 30 million, very ridiculous in this .com, in this generation. So we see that as a part of avenues of stifling dissenting views from especially the opposition. We saw the Black Mamba and the paramilitary outfits arresting suspects who are freed on bail. We have seen it, even in many cases, even the Segirinyas, they were arrested as they were freed and they were taken over by paramilitary outfits who could not be recognized. That is defeating the courts. So
I want to cut you short, Mr. Mulindwa, yeah, because we shall discuss much more of that. So yeah, you've given us some of the events that have characterized Uganda's political development, and yeah, it's quite interesting to hear that. And things have remained the same, and they have even gotten worse. Many have gotten worse. I want to bring you Harris, and before I do that, I maybe want to make a correction or a disclaimer. Uganda is Uganda is not under parliamentary system like Mr. Mulindwa rightly noted. However, we have three arms of government that are on equal footing, and they're all independent of each other. There is none that is supposed to be above each other. They are all on the same level. To use I think it was Justice Kanyehamba, and then later reiterated by Justice Odoki, who said that they are like cooking stoves, independent of each other, but then they can't, this idea called the state, the saucepan, cannot hold if any of those arms is missing. So they are together, complementary, however independent from each other, and they all reinforce each other in that none should be missing. And yeah, but any can check the other, honestly. Yeah, any can check the other. Parliament can check the executive, parliament can check judiciary, the judiciary can check parliament, and the executive, yes, and also the executive, in a sense, can check. There are different mechanisms, can also check the other arms of government. I want to bring you, Harris. Yes.
Information. Thank you very much for giving way. The information I want to furnish you is that the executive is just a kitchen where it prepares, and the food that it prepares is being eaten or rejected by parliament. So the executive prepared, for example, the issue of Nyege. it had to report it in parliament. It's the reason why we have the lead of government business in parliament. We have both presidential and parliamentary system. The executive reports to parliament and parliaments approve. Once parliament disapprove, then it can't stand the light of the way. That's the information I wanted to furnish you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, yeah, that's correct. We just when I said we don't have a parliamentary, it means I meant that we don't have sort of Westminster style, yeah, but we have sort of a hybrid that where all arms of government work together. I want to bring you Harris to first introduce yourself, and then you give us some of those key highlights that have characterized Uganda's political development in the past 60 years of her independence.
Thank you very much. Good morning, colleagues. At CCG, I would like to thank very much CCG for being a continuous platform for democratic voices. I don't take that for granted because we have seen many other good initiatives like CCG, being crushed, but Center for Constitutional Governance has remained steadfast. So I thank you. To our listeners, my name is Akampurira Walakila. I am the speaker, the People's Speaker of Kawempe Division. I'm glad to join in. Very interesting discussion reviewing the 60 years of independence, political independence. I have heard previously some commentators on this topic ask whether to begin with we are independent, or when we say independence, in what sense do we speak of that word? Because whereas symbolically we received our tools of government in October of 1962, many argue that in fact we have never been fully independent in one way or the other. But I think that's a debate for another day. What we are discussing here is an evaluation of political progress, and specifically to address your question, Martin, Councillor Martin, what are those key highlights that have marked our political journey over 60 years from the point of transfer of symbols and tools of power, 1962, to where we are now, 2022. An exercise of this sort, I think, begets an evaluation of what constitutes a state. And these are basically the three organs, the three essential organs of the state. That's the parliament, the executive, and the judiciary. The parliament essentially, or ideally from its conception from the days of Montesquieu, and this was a great French philosopher, was supposed to represent the voice of the people. So when parliamentarians set the question, or the guiding question at the back of the mind is, to what extent am I speaking for and on behalf of the people? So, and that's essentially democracy, that you are always speaking for and on behalf of the people. That's parliament. Then the executive, which is the implementer, putting into force what parliament has said. And then the executive and the judiciary always checking the excesses. So in an ideal democratic society, these organs are supposed to be in a balance, each checking the other. In what, again, constitutional lawyers or constitutionalists would argue a system of checks and balances. However, to historicize this debate, colleagues, remember that Uganda has had a checkered history. Immediately after our independence, we had military regimes from Obote. You remember the violent military overrun over the Buganda Palace at Mengo, one that still resonates rather violent in the minds of the Baganda and the country at large, in what would go down as one of the greatest unfortunate constitutional moments or political moment. And that was a continuity, as Dr. Kabumba would urge in his book, Militarism in Uganda, of the earlier use of brute military force by the colonialists. And that would usher in a dictatorial, brutal regime of Idi Amin, if you remember, and ruled by decree. I mean, Parliament was suspended and was a one-man show. Whatever he decreed according to his whims and whims, he would be done. And that era of Idi Amin was marked as bloodshed and gross human rights abuses, disappearance of people, especially political opponents. There was no freedom of speech and of the press, and there was nothing called civic space as we know it to characterize democratic spaces. So essentially that was it, was the military ruling, and human rights was a reality to speak of. And so, and then we will all remember the unstable regimes, and then how the NRM through the Bush War came into power. And that for a moment, briefly, between, from the time they won their Bush War in 1986 to the promulgation of the current Uganda Constitution, the 1995 Constitution, many Ugandans believed and supported what President Museveni and group called the 10-point program. Key among them, which was democracy and deepening democracy in Uganda, which is essentially trying to make sure that political power is accountable to the people. And that was a premise. So from 1995 to 2022, we should be asking a question: to what extent is political power in Uganda accountable to the people of Uganda? Or how different is the pre-1995 regimes, which I've described as military, as brutal, as regimes which did not respect human rights, different from the post-1995 regime, which is essentially the NRM stroke Museveni regime? How are they different? So the 1995 Constitution now gives Uganda a ray of hope, and it's a time for beginning afresh. Everyone is enthusiastic, everyone is optimistic, and constitutional lawyers, courts, and all is like, this is now a time to build a constitutional culture where no one is above the law, including the leaders, where we are going to see the rule of law. And for about, from what I read from commentators and political historians, that was so between 1995 and about 2000. And then 2005, the point of decline, sharp decline begins to kick in. I think maybe, to be fair, it should be looked at 2001. I mean, with the violent arrest and escape of Dr. Kizza Besigye, who was then the biggest political opponent to Mr. Museveni. So now, 2000, things now start taking a reversal turn. We slowly start crawling back to military dictatorship. And as days go by, it's very clear now that the political power in Uganda is not accountable. That whereas at 95, we thought that the military rule will disappear and the UPDF be accountable to the people of Uganda, with the constitution being supreme, that in fact we were misguided, we were being, the Ugandans were being naive, that this constitution was just being a veneer to cover up the actual intention. And the reality was that, in fact, it has always, and it was even at 1995, and it is, in fact, the military which is in charge of this country. And whereas we thought it was people of Uganda, because we know that Article 1 of our Constitution says power belongs to the people of Uganda, which shall be exercised in accordance to the Constitution. In other words, everything to be done, supposed to be done, but deriving power from the people, for the people, and on behalf of them. Yeah, but now, so then all of a sudden we're being woken up to a rude reminder that, in fact, we were duped, Ugandans were lied to, that it has always been the military. And yes, indicators of that are all over in our political discourse, in our publics. It's all there. A quick one is the 2021 national elections. That was never an election. And I always argue it was never an election. It was a military operation. And we have an example of Kenya to compare with. There was no one who was arrested. We did not hear gunshots. We did not hear anyone killed. We did not see tear gas on the streets of Nairobi. I mean, all opponents, all political players were equal. They were playing to the same rules. There's a leveled playing field. It may not have been perfect in some ways. Nowhere is an election perfect, even the best democracies like the US and the UK. But by all standards and measures, everyone, I think that even those who lost, I think fairly, they believe that it was a free and fair election. That's on the Kenyan side, which is fairly as old as Uganda, because I think we got independence just around the same time. But here, what we saw in Uganda was a brutal exercise. It's as if one group was a guerrilla, they were rebels, and the other were statesmen and women trying to save the nation. But this was an election supposed to be organized under the Constitution of Uganda, with each group supposed to be guaranteed equal protection, equal rights, but that's not what happened. And immediately after the election, you saw our streets. Up to now, the army is still on the streets, which is always a rude reminder that has always been the military in charge. And when you look at operations to evict, for example, the hawkers or street traders on the streets of Kampala, this is supposed to be a civilian exercise according to our laws, but you see battalions of UPDF being, unleashed upon the people, people being subjected to unnecessary, constant terror. I mean, reminding them of the 1970 days of Idi Amin, of brutal force of the military. Those are the days we have gone back to. And to wrap it up, when you look at our courts, I mean, I've just been seeing, we all know the torture victims from our colleague Kakwenza Ruchirabashaija, and how his skin was literally peeled as if they were peeling matoke, literally peeled. Almost every part of his body is a scar. I mean, he had to grow another skin layer, but the original one was peeled. And now recently, the son of one of their colleagues, Naduli, he was in clutches. And then in what is ironic, in what is a continuity of the 1970s, now, what should worry Ugandans more is that the courts have been subdued and they are not ready to protect your rights. Because think about it, which court properly worthy of the name can set the following as the bail condition: that the suspect is not supposed to speak to the media, the suspect is not supposed to say a word on social media, even when it is prima facie clear that the suspect has been tortured. I mean, this gentleman, the son to Naduli, is clearly in the clutches. We saw Kakwenza. It was prima facie clear to the judges that Kakwenza had been tortured. There had been a report by Uganda Human Rights Commission that he had been tortured. And the court is saying you're not supposed to speak in order for you to get bail. In fact, they even confiscate his passport. But the same court is supposed to enforce the laws of Uganda. And the Human Rights Enforcement Act of 2019 clearly stipulates that where it is clear that a non-derogable right has been abused, the charges are supposed to be dropped and no trials can go on. And one of the non-derogable rights, I mean, those are rights, the non-derogable rights are rights which can never be taken away under any circumstances. Key among them is torture. And it's very clear that these colleagues are being tortured, and the court it's in the face of everyone. The judges can see, but they don't have the balls. They don't have the power to assert their constitutional mandate. They have abdicated their duty in what is a total subjugation, in what is a total takeover of the executive over the judiciary. I mean, this is exactly what happened during the Idi Amin days, which culminated, I mean, was it yesterday when they were commemorating the Ben Chwanuka Memorial Day, when, it was the Ben Chwanuka Memorial Day. And we remember that Ben Chwanuka was the Chief Justice of Uganda who was murdered in cold blood. So what we see is now that whereas at 1995, there was a promise of a fresh start hinged on the 10-point program and mobilization of Uganda, the executive has now taken over in one of the most shameless ways. And we have now military power display, and parliament is subdued because parliament doesn't speak for and on behalf of the people. And it's very clear to see. It is very clear to tell from even the composition that this is the a mouthpiece of Mr. Museveni and his group. There is nothing really that is contentious where parliament can take a stand against the executive, even when circumstances are such that they ought to take a decision that challenges the executive. If the common good of Ugandans demands that they take such a stand, but that parliament doesn't have the balls.
Thank you, Harris. Yes, what is clear from the discussion of Harris and Walid is that Uganda's political history has been, of course, checkered, and it has been characterized by brutality and constitutionalism. I mean, it's a dark history, and because these 60 years have been predominantly they have been predominantly the military men are the ones that have actually been almost in power fully, or the longest. So it has been one of the rule by the barrel of the gun, and 36 years of that has been Mr. Museveni's time. So the current president of Uganda has ruled for 36 years. So it was only about 21 years, 20, yeah, that, I don't know if, yeah, 20, because when he was not in power, you know, it was about 28 plus 6. So it was about 24 years when he was not in power. But for the bigger chunk of the 60 years, Mr. Museveni has been in power. It's unfortunate, and he continued perhaps where his people stopped, and it's clear from what our people here are saying, and these are people on the ground who see what is going on. However, it's different from what Enid said. Enid portrayed a country that is on course for democracy, that is on course and is doing well. I don't know. Enid, would you want to clarify more on that, considering that you gave a bit of a more rosy picture of the country, and then the people in Harris and Mr. Mulindwa are saying it's the contrary. The political development or the political events of Uganda have actually been of brute. Yeah, they've been brutal. They've been atrocious. So, would you want to add to what they have said? Do you agree?
Yeah, you see, in the thesis of development, there are things that happen sometimes which needs to be given due respect. As an individual, as Enid, we need to give a credit where it is due. And I don't say that everything is all right. For instance, we had constitution, the Pigeonhole Constitution 1962, as someone mentioned there, and the decree of Idi Amin. But in 1995, the constitution which was put in place, at least some areas are still being respected, and people are enjoying the goodness of that constitution in Uganda. You see, like on the issue of independence of judiciary, partly I would say that judiciary, like one mentioned that the temple of justice has been filed, partly some things which are not good has been done on judiciary. But to be sincere, the three arms of government has to work together. They have to work together. You can't say that no, parliament has to make a decision, then it decides for the executive. Like on the issue of Nyege, because there is no way you would say that that event, me as in, I don't actually like those things that take place in that event. But if it was well organized, and if it was well, and if it was well organized and stipulated to show the country that ABCD is going to take place, because there are some advantages and earnings that were, for instance, tourists that were coming to Uganda, then I don't see the reason as why the executive did not come to protect the rights of the people who are going to participate. So it was a matter of parliament listening to the executive, and then they get together and see how to make the event go through in a manner that is respectable in this country. The constitution somewhere, somehow, Uganda has, through the 60 years of independence, we have seen a number of amendments in the constitution. It is not like other governments where constitutions have been respected and have been there for quite a long time. But here in Uganda, we see changing, making of amendments today, after 3 years, when the election is going to take place, then they bring something and then the constitution is amended. But somewhere, somehow, some people have benefited because on the issue of the age limit, the young scholars wouldn't have come if they maintained the 35 years and above of president. But when they reduced, the Katumba Wamara came. Wouldn't have known the ideas of the young scholars like Katumba Wamara. Because you may think that amending of the constitution on the age limit was protect President Museveni, but it also brought other young scholars on board, whom we saw their ideas, whom we had their ideas, whom exercised their rights. Then, when you compare like the issue of Kenya, you see in the stages of development in Uganda here, the challenge we have is one. But when you are developing, there are some stages that you want to move from very fast. When you are a young child, when you are born, you sit, you grow, you begin to stand, you go to school, you want to run from P7 to secondary, to graduate. Then after graduating, when you get a job, then you don't feel like leaving that job. You look for ways and means of protecting that job. I think that's where the problem is. During those regimes of Idi Amin, we were facing a lot of challenges. People were dying, and every person was eager to move from that government to another. Then those other governments, when we came to 1996, actually, when we came to NRM, and peace has been created, stability and democracy. But as you've mentioned, the 30 years, it is now that we were in those stages of development. When we got married and started producing children, then you sit down and you don't feel like the year should end because you are at that age of enjoying seeing your children playing, protecting, and getting married and whatever. So it is in this stage that we are in. That's why you see somewhere some leaders want to protect their positions. It will not be like Kenya, because in Kenya, there wasn't a person who was protecting his position. That's why you did not see tear gas. That's why you not see military action taking place. That's why because all of them were new and fresh in the political ground. So I think Uganda, what we are lacking now, for me, what I think we should embark on as a country is on the term limit. Because when all of us are new in the field, then there is no that kind of fracas. We see fracas in Uganda because someone is on power and is trying to protect. He has done much. NRM has done a lot, has tried to stabilize economy, although some challenges are there, has tried to push on, but I will not support the staying of power. It is the staying of power that is bringing all these challenges. But I won't say that in the 60 years, everything has been in negative. It hasn't been in negative. Quite a number of things have been achieved. Political environment has been created for investors to come in and invest. Even in Uganda, people have invested. Although you see, like I mentioned earlier, that it is a developing country. It has a number of challenges because when you are still developing, then you have things that probably hampers you away. I want to respond on the thing of the issue of Mr. Lubega about Karamoja, that the president is referring the Karamoja problems on the former leaders. You see, when you are going to tackle the problem, you need to first know its origin. Then when you get to identify where it originated from, then you raise strategy. So probably trying to see that the other governments have not tackled it in some ways. So you identify where it failed, and then you see how to tackle the problem like that one of Karamoja. Because like he mentioned, the other time we used to say, we should not wait for Karamoja to develop. So when you say that, it means it has been instituted in the heads of people during that time that you don't have to wait for Karamoja. If he says that it is because of those governments, partly is right. But now here he's saying, I am correcting this. We shall try to bring Karamoja on board so that it moves at the same pace with other governments, with other regions. And we talked about Uganda. During the we have seen kingdoms being abolished by that time. And this time have been this government, at least you appreciate that this government restored the kingdoms. But even if they restore the kingdoms, remember the kingdoms are working under this government, under the government, anyway, it will not be the NRM, but any other government, whichever will be there, it is working under government. So you can't say you are going to leave it as an independent organ. It does no, it needs to be checked. It is the role of the government to do check on activities and works of other organs that are operating in the government. I don't support the mistreatment of people because partly human rights have been violated. I entirely agree because I see how people have been mishandled, how the military is beating people. Actually, when even there is no need to enforcement, there is no need to bring the police, you find they're going to arrest one person without a gun, without a stick like this one, but they bring a whole battalion to arrest a person. I don't support it. I would love that Uganda becomes, we go back to those early time when the national anthem was formulated. The lyrics of our national anthem, which says, "Stand united and free for liberty." That's what we should aim at. We stand united to fight all these. We, instead of accusing and making accusations, then we say, this one has to be done. We propose, we fight to tell the people on an individual level, the government needs to do civic education. How do you live without provocating the police, without provocating the army, without provocating the judiciary in some ways or the other?
I want to cut you short. Thank you. You've said provoking. I do not think that people exercising their rights really is sort of provocation. And in any way, in a free society, provocations will always be there. But how do you respond to provocation? You know, if people criticize you, if people demonstrate against you and you're in a position of leadership, I don't know whether that is provocation, but they are doing what is right. They are entitled to that. And you, as a person in power, you're supposed to exercise restraint. You're supposed to exercise tolerance to divergent views. Anyway, as we go to other speakers, you've mentioned quite a number of things that I would also want to contribute to. And it has come out so much. Yes, I'm coming to you, Mr. Lubega. Yes. It seems that in Uganda, politicians have an exaggerated sense of importance. Politicians think that everything begins and ends with them. They think they have every power to even determine what happens in the private lives of Ugandans, the private lives of people. For example, that event that brought sort of knocking heads or knocking horns between the executive and the parliament. It shouldn't even have been an issue with them. First and foremost, it's not an issue of politicians. It's an issue of Ugandans to live their lives the way they want, to celebrate it. I mean, already there is enough of oppression, and the least you can do is to let Ugandans be. But to see a parliament and an executive that are supposed to be doing, in fact, a lot to protect people for their businesses, etc., concentrating on an issue that should not even be a point of discussion, because the constitution is clear. People have liberties, freedom of movement, economic freedoms, freedom to be in, to do what they want. But then we see politicians thinking that it is them to decide what Ugandans should do and not do. Yeah, that's one. But also you mentioned Kenya, that there was no one staying in power, and let's face it, the president of Kenya also had a position. He would have perhaps ordered the military or the army to protect his interest, to protect his position. He would have also climbed to power. It's possible, with even Mr. Museveni could have, because he was supposed to end leadership, his term in 2005, for example, but he chose to manipulate and extend his stay in power. He was also supposed to leave by 2021. He was not supposed to, but he also manipulated the constitution. So it's possible a person who has military might to manipulate, but it goes perhaps the character of the leaders. In Kenya, it's possible Uhuru Kenyatta would have used the forces he had to say, you know what, I've climbed to power, but he didn't. So it also speaks to the character of a military person that we have in Uganda, as a person who perhaps is willing to cling on to power regardless of anything. I want to to come back to you. Yes, Enid, you continue to contribute. So in a few minutes, Mulindwa, you have something to say, and then we shall continue. And as you respond, I want you to share with us your experience in the political space in Uganda as a politician. Yeah, so please do that in 3 minutes. So now you get to 3 minutes each speaker.
Thank you very much. I've listened attentively to my comment, Madam Enid, and I wanted to make two corrections. First of all, in her presentation, she informed us that the regime has actually provided a breeding ground for foreign investors to come and invest in this country. And she has not really been able to give us the attendant problems, the attendant issues with the investors. I want to make a clarification that the foreign investors we have are fake. We have fake foreign investors which government has actually attracted at the expense of indigenous businessmen. These foreign investors have actually outcompeted the indigenous businessmen, and they are held responsible partly for hamstringing and killing the local businesses in Uganda. A case in point is that these investors are given a loan with the interest rates of 23%, whereas, so with the interest rate of 4%, whereas the local investors, the indigenous businessmen, are given loan at 23%. There is no way a person who has got a bank loan at 4% can compete favorably with the one of 23%. That means the one of 23% will be really edged out of the business. So we can't really clap for that. Secondly, even the incentives that they are being given, they are given free land, they are even given free capital, even the labor, they exploit our own labor cheaply, at times even free. So we can't really, we have no any kind of local incentive for mushrooming businesses to thrive. A case in point is Pinet. Even when the president said we gave her the coffee deal, we gave her land, we have never seen any kind of dividends that came out of the Pinet deal. The Lubega hospital, we gave out almost 600 billion to construct a health facility. We have never seen anything. If that money was given to a local investor, really things would be different. We saw Agoa, Kananathan, we gave him free land, free capital, nothing. The business collapsed. As I speak, Kananathan is now an ambassador in Kenya representing Sri Lanka. What kind of mockery is that? So really, we can't, there is no track record to show that the foreign investors have really actually contributed to the economy in our country. So there's nothing. So even when you see our currency is the weakest in the region, it is the weakest in East Africa, it is the weakest in Africa, and it is the weakest compared to the dollar. Lastly, the issue of the constitution. She has talked about the constitution, the 1995 constitution, vis-a-vis the pigeonhole that the 1995 constitution wanted to correct the errors. But we have seen on many occasions the Museveni regime actually overthrowing the 1995 constitution. Herself, she has made a testimony that she wants the term limit to be brought back. The 1995 constitution had a safety valve of putting in place the presidential term limit and the age limit. While times went on, Mr. Museveni has actually kept on changing, overthrowing what he made. So we can't say we have a sound constitution, which has over time have been actually been deleted over time. So we don't have a constitution at the moment. We have something that actually shoots the person in power. When age catches up with him, he goes and amend it. When term limit catches up, he goes and amend. So we can't say we have a constitution. So in my own view, we need a new political order. We need a transition. Mr. Museveni needs to really pack and go for this country to begin on a clean thread. We can't really, there is nothing we can improve with him. We need a new leader who can usher in a new constitution, who can usher in a strong institution of the country. That said and done, it answers the question that you posed to me, my experience in the political space. If we don't have a strong institution at the moment, there is no way we shall have a good experience in the political space. Our voices will be stifled, especially as young people. Even government will continue to pay lip service to issues concerning to young people. They will come up with the programs that are really not realistic. For example, the issue of the YLP, Youth Livelihood Fund, where it will be a mockery of the time, where they will say young people are now going to benefit, they are going to empower young people. And at the end of the day, if we start to audit the YLP from 2013 up to up to last year, when the program was wounded up, then we shall showcase to you that really the program didn't actually had any iota of improvement towards the young.
Thank you, Mr. Mulindwa. You used much of your time to talk about investors beyond the politics, but I think it also goes into to show how politics and the current kind of dispensation we have in Uganda sort of intertwines itself with everything in Uganda because of the strongmanship that the country has. I mean, even business is connected to politics, you know, even people's private lives, as we earlier been saying, is so much connected to politics because politicians think they can also determine it. So yeah, it honestly shows the dilemma in which the country is. Although I wanted to hear your experience in terms of, you know, kind of persecution you've received as an activist, as a youth, you know, as I understand, you've also been arrested a number of times for just political engagement and civic engagement. Is that correct? Yeah.
But for me, that is the price we must pay in order for this country to regain its full freedom. We have been arrested a number of times. We have been beaten. We have been gagged. So really, it is an experience, the worst experience.
Yeah.
Whoever challenges the regime, he actually goes through that. So,
Yeah.
but the long and short story of it is that we are striving to achieve a regime change. We want to have a regime that really can protect the rights of the people, the rights of the citizens. We want to have a system that builds strong institutions beyond the big man syndrome. So that is what we are really striving to achieve.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, let's hear from you, Harris. Yeah, your experience in this political space as a youth, as someone who is in the political space actively involved and has been there from even your younger days. Share with us your experience.
I've been there, you know, right away from my university days, Martin, and I keep record of my arrests, and I just realized, I think it was last week, when I found that I actually have 20 bonds, police bonds at home. And I think my worst interaction with the regime was during the elections, the 2021 national elections, where I was in charge of Western Uganda for our national inter-platform candidate, His Excellency Robert Chagulanyi. And I can tell you, I felt like I was a rebel. I mean, especially towards the climax, the operation was purely militaristic in nature, and we had to respond as such. The very last week I spent it without showering, no changing trouser, no changing boxer, nothing. You enter a hotel room and the first thing you're concerned with is not where you're going to sleep, not the facilities in the hotel, but rather the escape route. If the hotel is constructed in such a way that if you hear people breaking, then you can escape through the window or the ceiling. Those are your main considerations, not the comfort. But it doesn't have to be that way. I mean, it doesn't, it's an election. I mean, it's supposed to be a competition of ideas, but that's my experience. And I've never fully recovered from that experience. I remember every time I would leave home, I would look at my little girl and I'm like, God, I hope this is not the last time I'm seeing you. And then I would have to hug her and I'm like, God, I hope I'll be able to come back and look at her. And many of my colleagues from that election were not as fortunate as me. I mean, my friends like Frank Senteza and many others who have disappeared, some of whom we've buried, others we have never seen. The others who are fortunate to still have life have not been fortunate enough to have their freedom. Thousands of them are still in Ichitaria, in Luzira, in Chigo, and we discover them. Someone has been there 1 year, 2 years, someone has disappeared. You're there, you discover him by the roadside. I mean, these stories are out there in the media. And I mean, you say, but what's the crime? What's the offense I've committed? And the offense is that you oppose the regime. And I keep telling my colleagues, especially those who still support the regime, that no one is safe. And the latest example of Nadudi's son should be a lesson for very many, that this is not about, fighting President Museveni or anyone, but rather it's a campaign of saying, let's create an environment where everyone is safe, where everyone has an opportunity to succeed. Because when you create an environment where just a few can succeed, then even you who is lied to that you're succeeding, it's not safe for you. And that's the unfortunate bit of it, that we see many people speaking for the regime because of the benefits they have extracted at an individual level. But at the bigger level, they are not safe. Because I hear these people talk about on the state of the nation address, and they are giving all these rosy figures. But I tell them, come to Kawempe, come to the ghettos, Machindi, come to any ghetto, and you see that actually, if we had realistic statistics, you'd see that only about 10% of Ugandans are well off, but about 90% of Ugandans cannot say there has been progress for them in this country. So in terms of experience, imagine, even when I am a speaker of the division, I mean, this is one of the 5 divisions of the Kampala capital city. Cities world over are respected because they are economic centers, they are political centers, they are centers of innovation, they are centers of progress, they are centers of ideas. In other words, you're leading people in one of the most sensitive and important areas, but you see me being rounded up from my council. I mean, I'm chairing a meeting on behalf and for the people of Kawempe. But the state doesn't care. They will take you even with your gown and arrest you with your gown, show the people, and they're very deliberate. When they do this, they do it to humiliate, they do it to demoralize, they do it to, all sorts of these things, because they know that we are no longer led by reason, but rather by intimidation and corruption, because those are the 2 tools Museveni has at his hands. Political corruption, you buy opponents, and if you have young people who say, no, we are much better than that. I like to tell my colleagues that my personal mantra is memento mori. No, life is vanity. We are here. Even if you accumulate whichever wealth, you will always leave it, either by way of the will or the law. Naturally, will appropriate that wealth. So you can do so little. So for me, if you then show Museveni that you're not worthy of his monies, then he now unleashes violence to you. But there is hope, and I want to conclude by this, that verily, verily, as day follows night, Museveni is going to go, his regime and his cabal is going to collapse, and Uganda is going to move forward. And Ugandans are going to witness change. And that day is not very far away from today. I thank you very much, Martin.
Yes, are those your closing remarks?
Yes, Martin.
Because that will again lead us into the closing round. Those are
all right. If I have 2 other minutes, I'll gladly use them, Martin. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Okay, yes, so let us begin with Walid, then Enid, and no, let us begin with Enid, because usually Enid raises a number of issues, some issues, and then other people need to rebut them. So Enid, in 2 minutes, please make your concluding remarks, but most importantly, give us hope. As people in Uganda, give us hope as Ugandans that the political times can be better. I mean, do you see any hope anyway? Because I don't want to impose an idea on you. If you see hope, please do. But you can also tell us how you envisage the political spectrum to be 60 years onwards, now that we've reached 60 years and ahead.
Okay, thank you. You see, probably you intend to make me the first to speak. And you see, they say whoever speaks last speaks better. But I think it is not all that is worse in this country. I'm sorry for the situation that is happening to my colleagues, most especially Akampulira, the way he has been manhandled. I don't support it. That is abuse of human rights under God's creation. I think what we need in Uganda here, to me, I'm running short of time because I have another meeting that I'm going to attend. But let me put this down. In Uganda, the most problem thing that we have is one or two. There is a lack of capacity building among the people, most especially those in politics. When you go to a party like FDC, when I say that there is a lack of capacity building, it still clings on Kano Chizabesije even when he's no longer the party president. I really have not heard or seen the president of FDC talking like how Besije is doing and pushing things. So it means in party itself, there has been divisions, there has been misunderstandings, and they have failed to build the strong capacity of the people that will take over. So the same applies to the NRM government. Let me be objective on this. It also has failed to build the capacity. Probably the old man, I will say the old man, because the man is our grandfather, because he's calling us our Bazpro. That is a respect also. So probably he looks there and fails to see the person that will come. But it is not a matter of that they are not there. They are there, but the system has not built capacity. So to Ugandans, we need to aim at building the capacity. If it is a party of 100 people, we say even the last person on the chain becomes the party president and takes the country. There has been lack of independent in policies, in policy formulation, and even in some departments and organs. For instance, we need a strong parliament which cannot be twisted. That's why we are facing challenges of amending constitution today, tomorrow, a day in and out. Because if the members of parliament would stand on their grounds and firm and they support and they reason and they say we are not supporting the amendment of this of the constitution, then they throw it away. Then we shall remain with the protest. Do you want me that in USA, where they have had a constitution of over 400 years, and don't people have brains? They have brains, but they are self-independent in making decisions. Here in Uganda, we have a problem of corruption. Corruption has become a cancer, has become a vice, where people have failed to build themselves, even when they are in parliament, because of how they went to parliament. They have been some people. So we need to have an empowered citizen We need people who are empowered, who are strong enough to say no money in politics.
Thank you.
When we have monetized elections, we shall have strong members of parliament that will not sit down and see people suffering in ways of changing and amending the constitution. So
thank you very much, Enid.
I appeal, I'm concluding because of here. My appeal is we need a clean leadership. We need political parties which are very strong. You can't have a leader today who is saying and singing BP, tomorrow is moving and leaving his people behind to join another party. Today I'm in NRM, tomorrow you find me moving with another party. People have not been educated enough to make choices and know why they are joining the party. And I appeal to the government to respect other parties.
Thank
because the rules break. When you are in a home and you don't have any person to save you, for instance, if you have a wife who always says yes, yes to whatever decision they say, don't think that woman is a fool. You are sitting in the same home because he has seen that the environment is not safe for her.
Thank you very much, Enid, for that positive note you've ended with, and also exercising introspection as a member of the national resistance movement that is currently in power in Uganda. We really appreciate your honesty, and we don't take it for granted, and your civility. We'll go to you, Mr. Mulindwa, please, in a few minutes.
Thank you very much for giving us this opportunity. And I would also like to thank CCG for offering us this civic space. But allow me also to respond in a second, my sister Enid. The FDC doesn't lack capacity. We have the capacity and we have offered the space for leadership. We have had about 2 presidents coming after Colonel Dr. Kiza Besigye. That is the Honorable retired Major General Mugisha Muntu and the Honorable Patrick Amliato Boy. That means there is development, there is steady progress in FDC if we can change leadership. Next year, we are going for a delegates conference. All the office bearers, including my office, will be vacant. New leaders will come on board. So really, that is the plus on our side. That doesn't mean that we don't have a capacity. We have many capable people, and the party offers space for them to flourish. As I wind up, I want to make a comparative analysis with our colleagues from Kenya in terms of progress. In Tanzania and Kenya, they are already in the middle income status. Ours, it is just in words, which yet we are not there. So they have in Kenya, they have Kenya and Tanzania, they have the standard gauge levy. It has taken off. Ours, it is just in words. We have never gone anywhere. In Kenya, under the regime of President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, the 10 years, under his 10 years, they have moved from being the 12th to the 6th, the 6th position in Africa. And as I speak, Kenya is the leading economy in East Africa. So in Africa, they are the 6th. So really, in terms of progress, you can track that Kenya and Tanzania almost got the same, they got their independence at the same time with Uganda, almost. But in terms of progress, we can't be comparable to them. And as I end, in my own thinking, colonialists were better than the leaders you have today. Because as you can track their record, they built schools, they built hospitals, which we still, the Mulagos, whatever, we are still having that colonial legacy. We are still enjoying that colonial legacy. Up to date, we don't have schools, we don't have better hospitals constructed under the Museveni regime. So the railway has gone to the dogs under Museveni, yet the colonialists built these railways. So we have just seen the president, the Museveni regime constructing roads in Eastern Congo. They have constructed schools in Tanzania. What a mockery. Yet here in Uganda, we are really, the schools are dilapidated. They are in a very sorry state. And you hear the president say, we have built a school in Tanzania. We have built a school, a road in Kenya, in Congo. So in terms of progress, we have actually backtracked on what the colonialists, the post-independence leaders worked on, and we are really in a reverse. We are in a reverse gear, and there is no progress to track. I thank you very much.
You've not ended on a positive note. It's okay. Yes, Harris, let us have you.
Martin, mine will be a vote of thanks once again to CCG for being, consistent and persistent in their agenda to, deepen democracy in Uganda. And also a clarion call to young people, especially from the NRM, those who support the NRM, or those who claim that they are neutral. The reminder is that we will be in this country together longer than their parents, uncles, and their grandparents, because some of them do these things they do under the guise that they are securing for them a future. But being of the same generation, I want to believe we share the same values. And I want to appeal to their better sense that they should aspire to live in a country where we are all equal, where they achieve and attain whatever they get because they merit it, not because their fathers, their uncles illegally and illegitimately secured it for them. I call upon them to join us to build a country where everyone has an opportunity, a country which brings out their best potential, which secures opportunities for everyone. My worry for them is that if the trend or trajectory continues as it is, they are not safe. No one is safe. No one of us is safe because the country will be unsustainable. And I know that most of them are now educated, well educated. So I want to appeal to their morality when they see young people being tortured for no good reason, just for political persecution. I want to appeal to their morality that they should be concerned. I hope we reach that point, just like during the civil rights movement in the USA, when the white people joined Martin Luther and his group, because that was a turning moment.
Yeah.
Because the white people, once their conscience was appealed to, and they realized that the black people were being mistreated and justly treated for who they are, being black. And once the white people joined, that is when the struggle was won. That is when rights were granted. So similarly, these young people, especially sons and daughters of generals, high-ranking officials in government, once they join us, and these people in government who are mistreating us realize that it's not about us against them, but about the future of this country. That is when we are going to make headways. And I hope that we get this message as deeply as possible. And in the same spirit, I want to assure them that they are our brothers, they are our sisters, and we are not vengeant persons. We just want a bright future for everyone. Good morning, Uganda.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kampurira Warakira Rubanken Harris, for that clarion call. Thank you, Mr. Mulindwa, for telling us what is the reality and what we really have to hear. It's really important, and there's no better time to have this conversation. We thank Enid for being present here and also taking part in this discussion. Like Harris has said, it's important that the people, even the people in power, realize that it's not enough to have power, to be well, when everything around you is devastated, when everything around you is not in order. You cannot yourself enjoy the space you occupy, because that space will still be small and all around it will be ruin. So we also, like he also said, we call upon the people who have the power, the privilege, to also realize that that privilege is actually built on sand. Should the systems break, it will also be devastating for them. Therefore, it's important for all of us to build a society where we can be secure, where there is respect for human rights, where there is respect for each and every person's view, where there is humanity, where everyone matters. Because at the end of the day, the people in opposition, the people in government, people in civil society all want a better society. It's not about us against them. It's not about enemy or friend. It's about all people together. It's important that politicians also look at Ugandans as people, not as subjects. That it's important for politicians, religious leaders, everyone to see people in Uganda as people, as humans who enjoy dignity and who should be treated as such, with dignity and fairness. Thank you very much, Center for Constitutional Governance and Civic Space TV, for convening this. It has been a great show, and I've been your host, Martin. See you again, and have a lovely week.